Hello, my name is Raul Vargas and I am a teacher here at Pathways and I am going to show you how to use App Inventor today. So I'm going to open up my web browser and so App Inventor is web-based, so you don't have to install anything. It runs completely over the internet. So you can use any web browser, but I find Chrome works the best. The URL you're going to go to is appinventor.mit.edu and you're just going to click on in the top right corner. It says create apps. Now, when you do this for the first time, it's going to open up with a Google login page. And so you're going to have to log in with your Google account. You're going to have to give it permissions. And then it will come to a screen that looks a little bit like this, but yours is going to look different because I've made a whole bunch of apps. Yours won't have any apps. I think there'll be a little button that says get started. So you're just going to hit OK. I'm going to click start a new project. So you should get this window where it's going to ask you to name your project. The app that we're going to make is a Magic 8 Ball app. So as I make this app, I'll try to explain the different features of App Inventor. So Magic 8 Ball, and this screen will pop up. Let me full screen this. And so App Inventor has two main views. It has a designer view and it has a blocks view. The designer view is where you set up your interface, how the app is going to look. It's also where you give your app components that it can use when you start to code, non-visible components such as being able to speak, detecting location, detecting shaking, the ability to text, play sounds, that kind of stuff. So I'm gonna go through this view first. We'll set up our interface and then I will jump over to the coding. So all the way on the left is your palette and you have these different tabs. These different tabs all contain all of the different components that you can add to your project. So under user interface, you have things like buttons, checkboxes, images, labels. Labels are a text that appear that you can't edit. That's different than a text box, which is text you can edit. And you can go through all these other ones. If you're curious about any of them, there's a little question mark. You can click on it and it'll give you a little description, and you can click down here and it'll give you some more documentation. Under layout, you can decide how you want to arrange these components. By default, all of the components are added vertically, but you might want to put things next to each other or in a table. You can use these components to be able to do that. Media, you have ability to use the camera, ability to play sounds, to do text to speech, which we're going to use. Joining animation allows you to add a canvas, which allows you to animate and move things freely across the screen. I don't have to go too much into these. We use storage a lot. You might not get to use this today, but storage allows you to save things permanently. Connectivity, nothing there that you'll be using anytime soon. All right, so so these are your palette. This is your palette, all the different components you can use. Let's start making our app. So this app is going to use a image component because we're gonna have a picture of a Magic 8 Ball, and it's gonna have two labels. We're gonna have two pieces of text. Notice as I keep adding things, over here you can see how they're added to the project, right? We have an image 1, label 2. And over here we have the properties. Each of these components has its own set of properties. So let's go to image 1. And over here, so obviously right now it's not an image yet. Over here you notice it says picture. You can click on picture and you can upload a file. So we're going to do that. And we're going to upload a file of a picture of a Magic 8 Ball. You can go find one online. I already found one and I downloaded it. So I'm just going to hit upload file. And it's on my desktop right here, image8ball.jpg. And I'm going to press OK. And it uploads it right to the project. Over here you can set the height and the width if you want. I'll leave it like that. All right, label 1. So I'm going to go over here. So this is label 1's properties. You have things like font size, font color, bold, things like that. I'm just going to change the text. And I'm going to put ask the Magic 8 Ball a question and shake. And you notice I changed the text over here, and then if you look at my interface, it is over here, it's changed as well. The second label, I am going to just put 3 little dots. That's going to stay empty for now. What we're going to do eventually is when we shake the app, your fortune is going to appear right here. So our app, the way our app is going to work, you're going to shake it, and a fortune will appear right here, but it's also going to speak it out loud. So we're going to have to add 2 things. One thing to detect the shaking. So that's going to be under sensors, and it's called an accelerometer sensor. So I'm going to drag this over, and notice that it jumps down here under non-visible components. And it also appears over here. We can leave the properties as is. Now I'm going to add a text-to-speech component. So that's under media. And same thing with text-to-speech. It's a non-visible component. Appears over here, does not appear in the interface. It's not something you can see. It's more of an ability that the app can do. At this point, we are done with our interface. It's time to code. So just to review again, before I make that jump over here is your palette, all of the different components you can add. This is what the app is going to look like when you test it. Over here are all of the components that your app currently has. You can rename these, by the way. If you have a lot of buttons, it helps to rename them instead of button 1, button 2, button 3. They have more meaningful names. It'll help when it comes to code. And then over here we have the properties, and every component has its own set of properties. For example, label 1, I can make it bold. I can change the text color to blue if I want. I can change the font size. And that's too big right there, but you get the point. All right, now it's time to start coding. I'm going to hit blocks, and this is the coding view. So over here we have all of our blocks, or our categories of blocks. So we have some ones that are built in. So we have things under control. We have the ability to open another screen. I think that's the main one you might use today. We have an if statement, actually, you might use that. And we also have loops. Those come in handy. And we have another loop over here, a while loop. So under logic, you can create more complex statements. Math, if you need a number for some reason, if you need to pick a random number, if you need to do any of the arithmetic operations like addition and subtraction and all that, you can use these blocks. Text, we're going to use text today because our fortunes are going to be text. List, we're also going to use a list today because we're going to have a list of fortunes. So I'll go back to that in a second. Colors, variables, we're going to use that in a second. Procedures comes in handy later on. You can package code under a procedure name. So these are the built-in ones. And then over here you have blocks for all of the components that you added. So every component has its own set of blocks that can do things that are specific to that component. So our app, first thing we're going to do is let's make our list of fortunes. So I'm going to go to list, and we're going to do make a list. Notice how we have puzzle pieces, right? This needs to be clipped in somewhere. And it also has things that are clipped into it. So we're going to go to variables. And we're going to call initialize. We're going to grab initialize a variable. And we're going to call it predictions. So we're going to name our list predictions. We're storing our list inside a variable named predictions. And then our list is a list of what? It could be a list of numbers. It could be a list of things. It could be a list of text, which is what it is in our case. So we're going to drag a text block. So that was under text. I grab the first one. It's an empty text block. You can copy and paste that if you want using keyboard shortcuts. All right. So let's see. For Magic 8 Ball, we might have yes. Right? We might have no. But that would be a pretty boring Magic 8 Ball with only those 2 fortunes. So we're going to hit this little blue gear right here. This is a block modifier. And if you notice, my list right now only has 2 items. Well, over here, we can grab this little block and bring it over here. It modifies this block to give you the ability to add more items. So I'm going to add 5 items. I think that's a good length for a Magic 8 Ball list of fortunes. And I'm going to copy this, and I'm just going to paste it. And again, if you don't want to paste, you can just go over here and grab one of these blocks. If you have too many blocks, you can just delete it. And to delete it, you can just grab it, bring it to the trash can, or you can just press delete on your keyboard. So yes, no, probably, ask again later, and what else should we say? Maybe probably yes. Yeah, that's probably too similar. Let's put no way. You know what? Reply hazy. That's one that I like. All right, so we have yes, no, probably, ask again later, reply hazy. All right, so we have our list of predictions. Now it's time to give it some functionality. So if you remember, I said I want the app to give you a fortune when you shake it. So I'm going to go to accelerometer sensor. That's the component that detects shaking. And you have blocks. Notice the blocks are color coded. So they're color coded for a reason. The yellow blocks are event handling methods. Basically, they're blocks that are waiting for something to happen. So we're going to use this one when accelerometer sensor is shaking. It's waiting for the accelerometer to shake. So what are we going to do when it shakes? Well, we want to set the label. So I'm going to go to designer view. We want to set this label. So this was called label 2. So I'll go back to blocks. Label 2, we're going to set label two's text to a random item on this list. So if you go under list, you notice if you might have noticed this, there is a object or a block called pick a random item. So we're going to use this block. And notice pick a random item, and then over here it says list. The reason it says list is because it wants you to hook a list into here. So we have a list and we stored it under predictions. So we can use this block right here, get global predictions, or if you go to variables, you use a plain get block, works the same. What's going to happen is when you click it in, you have an X because you have to select something. And when you click here, we only have one choice, predictions. That's the only variable I have. So now when you shake it, it's going to set the label to a random item on this list of predictions. All right, so it right now, the app is partially functional. We can run it, we can shake it, and it'll have the fortune appear right here. But we also want it to speak. That's why we added the text-to-speech component. So I'm going to go back in here, text-to-speech, and notice, so we have another type of block now. I told you the yellow blocks. The yellow blocks are, these are event handling methods. The purple blocks are methods or actions, you can think of them. So speak, so we're going to have it speak. Text-to-speech, speak, and it needs to know what message to speak. Now, one common mistake that people make with this app is that they put another pick a random item block. The problem with that is that the label will be set to a random item, but then it'll speak another random item. So we don't want to pick another random item. Instead, we want to speak the message that we just randomly picked in the line of code before. Now, thankfully for us, we picked a random item, but then we stored it inside label two's text, or rather, we changed label two's text to that random item. So at this point, all we need to do is speak whatever label two's text was just set to. So I'm going to go to label 2, and that brings me to another type of block, these green blocks. These green blocks are called, these are property blocks. They allow you to set properties or get properties. So over here we use the set, we set label two's text. Now we want to get label two's text. So label 2 text right here. It doesn't say the word get, but this is some people call it a getter block. So we're gonna clip that in right there. And that's it. We are done with our app. We've created a list of fortunes. It is listening for shaking. When you shake your app, it will pick a random item off the list, and then it will speak it out loud. All right, so now it's time to test. You can, there's two ways to test. There's a build option, which allows you to save the APK file. APKs are executable Android files to your computer, or it can give you a QR code, and then you can scan it onto your Android device and be able to install it permanently. Usually, though, the way I test is using something called the AI Companion, the App Inventor Companion. And this is real quick, and it's real easy to make changes, and you don't have to keep on installing the app over and over again every time you want to test. So notice when I clicked on that, it gave me a barcode. So at this point, you need to have a companion app installed on your device. So notice over here, it gives you the instructions: launch the MIT AI2 companion on your device and then scan the barcode. So you would open up that app, you would scan the barcode. After maybe like 30 seconds or so, it will load on your device. You can test it and it should work fine. And if you can make changes to it in real time, and it's a handy tool for testing. So I think that gives you enough to be able to experiment with App Inventor and to be able to make something simple but functional. So I'm going to end this tutorial right here. Thank you for listening.